My husband confessed he'd been cheating, expecting me to cry. I told him I was seeing someone too, and the name destroyed him. My husband Reggie came home one night and confessed he had been sleeping with someone else for 4 months. He sat me down at the dining table and he was shaking. His eyes were red and he could barely get the words out. He told me he was sorry. He told me it didn't mean anything. He told me he wanted to fix things and would do whatever it took. I looked at him and said, okay, that's all I said. Okay. He stared at me for a long time, waiting for me to cry or throw something or ask who she was. I didn't do any of that. I asked him if he wanted dinner because I had made pot roast. He looked so confused it was almost funny. What Reggie didn't know was that I had found out about his affair 5 months before he told me. A full month before it even started. He had been texting a woman named Dana from his gym. I saw the messages one morning when his phone lit up on the nightstand while he was in the shower. He had her saved with a little heart emoji next to her name. The water was running and I sat there on the edge of the bed and read every message from the top. Late night check-ins, inside jokes about people at the gym, pictures of her in workout gear that he had reacted to. At that point it was just flirting, but I knew where it was going because I know Reggie. I didn't confront him. I didn't ask questions. I didn't cry. I just put the phone face down on the nightstand exactly where I found it and went to make coffee. That night I cried alone in the bathroom at 2 in the morning while he slept down the hall. The next night I cried again. The night after that, I didn't cry at all. By the end of that first week, something had shifted inside me, and I knew I wasn't going to be the woman who confronted him with screenshots and waited for an apology. I just let it happen. About 3 weeks after I found those texts, I started seeing someone too. His name was Gio, and he was Reggie's best friend since college. They had been close for over 12 years. Gio was at our wedding. He was at our housewarming. He knew everything about Reggie, and he knew everything about me because that's how close they were. It started because Gio came over one afternoon to drop off a jacket Reggie had left at his place after a basketball game. Reggie wasn't home. We started talking, and I told him what Reggie was doing. Gio wasn't surprised. He said Reggie had a history of this from before we got married. He said he had seen Reggie do it to 2 other women and never said anything because he didn't think it was his place. I asked him why he was telling me now. He said because you're the only one who didn't deserve it. Things happened from there. We were careful. We never met at my house and never met at his apartment because Reggie had a key. This went on for about 4 months. Meanwhile, Reggie was running around with Dana thinking he was getting away with it and coming home every night acting like everything was fine. He kissed me on the forehead before bed. He told me he loved me. He brought me flowers twice during that time, something he never did in the 6 years before, so I knew the guilt was eating at him. By the time he confessed at the table that night, I already had 4 months of my own situation built up. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I had processed all of that on my own time and on my own terms. So when I said okay and offered him pot roast, it was real. I was fine. Reggie spent the next 2 weeks doing everything he could to make it up to me. He cooked breakfast every morning, eggs the way I liked them, toast cut into halves the way I always cut my own. He cleaned the house without being asked. He scrubbed the bathroom grout with a toothbrush. He came home early from work every day. He booked a couples retreat at a resort upstate and showed me the brochure with the page already folded down to the cabin he wanted. He signed us up for marriage counseling. He told me he ended things with Dana and even showed me the text where he did it, like the proof was supposed to mean something. He wrote me a letter on yellow legal paper about how stupid he had been. He was working harder in 2 weeks than he had in 6 years, all because he expected me to fall apart, and I didn't. It drove him crazy that I was calm. He kept asking if I was really okay. I kept telling him I was. About a week later, Reggie went to shoot hoops with Gio on a Saturday morning like they always did. He came home 3 hours later, and he was a completely different person. He walked through the front door and went straight to the bedroom and started pulling open drawers. He was looking for something, but I don't think he knew what. I walked in and asked him what was going on. He turned around and asked me if I was sleeping with Gio. I looked at him and I said yes. The sound that came out of him was something I had never heard before, like something broke inside his chest. He sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. He kept saying not Gio over and over. I stood in the doorway and watched him. I didn't explain myself. I didn't apologize. He looked up at me and asked how long. I told him about 4 months. He said that was the same amount of time as his affair. I said I know. He asked if I had started seeing Gio because of what he did. I said no. I told him I started seeing Gio because Gio was the first person who told me the truth about who Reggie actually was. That answer hit him harder than anything else I could have said, because it wasn't revenge. If it was revenge, he could understand it. He could say we both made mistakes, but this wasn't that. Gio gave me something real while Reggie was out playing games with Dana. Reggie wiped his face and tried to put armor back on. He said, so you caught feelings for my best friend? That's worse than what I did. I didn't raise my voice. I said, you slept with a stranger from your gym for 4 months and lied to my face every night. Gio at least had the decency to tell me the truth about who you are. His jaw worked, but nothing came out. He started pacing with his hands behind his neck. Then he stopped. He said, Gio knew about Dana? I said, Gio knew about Dana and the 2 women before me. He told me everything. Something shifted in his face. Not anger, not sadness. A slow, sick realization, like he was doing math and the numbers kept coming back wrong. Up until that moment, I think Reggie had been holding on to the idea that Gio and I just happened. Now he saw the full picture. Gio didn't stumble into this. Gio knew exactly who Reggie was. Gio knew about every woman Reggie had done this to. Gio knew about Dana specifically. And Gio still chose me, not to steal his best friend's wife, but because he looked at the situation clearly and decided Reggie didn't deserve me. That was what was breaking him right there in the middle of our bedroom. Not the cheating, the choosing. His voice got quiet. He said, I'm going to call him right now. He's going to tell me this isn't true. He said it like he was trying to convince himself. I said, go ahead, call him. I didn't flinch. I said it the way you'd tell someone to check the weather if they didn't believe it was raining, because I knew what Gio would say. He had been lying for Reggie for 12 years and he was done. Reggie picked up his phone from the nightstand. His hands were shaking so bad he had to try the passcode twice. He hit call and then put it on speaker. I think he wanted me to hear Gio deny everything. The phone rang once, then twice. Gio picked up on the second ring. He didn't say hello. He said, Reg, like he had been sitting with his phone waiting for it. Reggie's voice was shaking. He said, tell me she's lying. Tell me nothing happened between you and my wife. There was a pause, maybe 3 seconds. Then Gio's voice came through the speaker, steady and clear. He said, I'm not going to lie to you, Reg. Not anymore. 7 words. words. Reggie's hand fell into his lap. The phone was still on speaker. Gio was still on the line. He didn't hang up. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to explain himself. He just waited on the other end of that call. The room was completely silent except for Reggie breathing, and even that sounded like it was coming apart. I stood in the doorway and watched Reggie's whole world split open in front of me. Not because of what I did, not because of what Gio did, but because the one person he was counting on to back him up just told him the truth. And the truth was that Gio wasn't sorry. Reggie was losing his wife and his best friend in the same conversation, and neither one of us was crying about it. Finally, he forced out, "How long?" Gio said, "About 4 months. Same as you and Dana." Reggie's whole body jerked. He leaned toward the phone and said, "Don't you dare compare what I did to this. You were supposed to be my brother." His voice broke on the word brother. Gio's voice stayed so steady it almost sounded gentle. He said, "Brothers don't let brothers destroy good women over and over and say nothing. I said nothing for 12 years. That's on me." Reggie shot up off the bed. He shouted, "You sat at my wedding. You stood next to me and smiled while you were waiting to take my wife." Gio said, "I wasn't waiting for anything. I watched you treat her like furniture for 6 years and then start texting another woman. I didn't plan this, but I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry it happened." That word hit me too. Furniture. 6 years of being in the room but never really being seen. Gio saw that from the outside before I had the words for it myself. Reggie's face went through everything at once. Disbelief, fury, then something that looked like humiliation. Because Gio wasn't just telling Reggie what he did. He was telling Reggie what he saw. A man who treated his wife like background noise. Reggie spun toward me. "You're just going to stand there and let him talk to me like that? In our house?" I kept my voice level. "You're the one who called him. I didn't stop you." He looked back at the phone. His knuckles were pale from gripping it. He said, "We're done. 12 years and we're done. You know that, right?" Like ending the friendship was supposed to hurt Gio. Gio said, "We were done the moment you started texting Dana and I had to watch your wife pretend she didn't know." Reggie stabbed the end button so hard I thought he might crack the screen. He threw the phone onto the bed. He sat back down slowly, like sitting was something he had to think about. He looked at the floor. He said, "I confessed to you. I came to you like a man and told you the truth. And this whole time you were lying to me." His voice cracked. "You let me write that letter. You let me book that retreat. You let me think I was saving this marriage." He looked up at me. His eyes were red. "Do you know how that makes me feel?" Something tightened in my chest when he said that. Some old part of me that used to care about making Reggie feel okay. But I didn't back down. Backing down would mean letting him rewrite the story so he was the victim and I was the villain. So I said, "Now you know exactly how I felt for 5 months." He sat there breathing. The room was still except for the hum of the ceiling fan and the sound of a car passing by outside. Then his voice changed. It got cold and flat. He said, "I'm calling Josiah. I'm calling your brother. I'm calling everyone. They're going to know what kind of person you are." That was Reggie's move. When he couldn't win in front of him, he took it outside. He played the victim until someone felt sorry for him and used that sympathy like a weapon. But I was ready. I kept my voice calm. "Do whatever you need to do. But remember, my story starts with your texts to Dana. Yours starts with a confession you made because the guilt was eating you alive. Pick which version you want people to hear." His jaw tightened. He wanted to fire back. I could see it sitting behind his teeth, but he didn't, because somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew I was right. His version started after mine did. He picked up his phone, looked at it, and set it back down. He didn't call anyone that night. He slept in the guest room. I called my brother first thing the next morning, before Reggie could get to him. I sat on the couch with a cup of coffee and my phone in my hand, and took a second to steady myself before I hit the call button. Josiah picked up on the third ring, and before I could say good morning, he said Reggie had already texted him at 2 in the morning saying I cheated with Gio. I asked, "Did he tell you he cheated on me first? 4 months? With a woman named Dana from his gym?" The line went quiet. Not like a bad connection quiet, like a person sitting very still and rethinking everything they thought they knew quiet. He said no, he left that part out. Right on schedule. Reggie's playbook. Tell the part that makes you look like the victim. Leave out the part that started it. I walked him through everything. The texts on the nightstand a full month before the affair started. The 5 months of silence while I watched it happen. Gio telling me about the 2 women before me. The 4 months I had my own thing going while Reggie thought he was getting away with something. By the time I was done, Josiah said it was the most cold-blooded thing he had ever heard. But honestly, I get it. Like a puzzle had just been solved for him. Brunhilde, our mutual friend, texted me 20 minutes later asking if it was true. Reggie had already gotten to her. I called her right back and laid out the same timeline. When I was done, she said, "He called me acting like he was the victim and didn't mention any of this." Wow, that was enough. I didn't need her to pick a side. I just needed her to have the whole picture so whatever Reggie said next wouldn't land. That afternoon, Reggie came downstairs. He stood in the doorway and said Brunhilde hadn't been very sympathetic. I said, "That's because I talked to her first, and I told her everything, including the parts you left out." His face got hard. He said, "You're trying to turn everyone against me." I said, "No, I'm just telling the truth, something you've never been comfortable with." He crossed his arms. "I want you out of this house." I didn't move. "This house is in both our names. I'm not going anywhere." He said, "Then I'm going to talk to a lawyer." I looked at him. "Go ahead. I already talked to one last week." He stared at me. His arms dropped. "Last week? Before I even found out about Gio?" I nodded. He took a step back. He said, "You planned all of this." His voice was small now, like a kid who just found out the game was rigged from the start. I said, "No, I prepared for it. There's a difference. You're the one who started all of this. I just decided I wasn't going to be the one who lost." He grabbed his keys and walked out. He was gone for 2 days. 2 days without Reggie in the house, and I finally felt like I could breathe. Josiah checked on me twice. Brunhilde came over with food and sat with me on the couch and told me she had my back no matter what. Gio called every night, but we agreed not to see each other until this settled. I wasn't hiding from the mess. I was just letting Reggie run out of people to perform for, because every person he called got the full story, and every single one of them came back to me with the same thing. He left out the part about Dana. He always left out the part that made him look bad. When Reggie finally came back, he sat at the dining table again, the same table where he had confessed. He looked rough. His clothes were wrinkled. His face looked thinner. He said he had talked to everyone. Josiah, Brunhilde, even Gio's sister. He said, "Nobody's on my side, not one person." Gio's sister told me she always thought I was selfish. She said it to my face. He tried one more angle. "If you knew about Dana before it even started, why didn't you just tell me. We could have worked it out. Like it was my job to save him from himself. I said, because I wanted to see what you would do. And you did exactly what Gio said you would. You chose yourself and expected me to be there when you were done. He put his head in his hands. He said, that's not fair. I said, neither was reading those texts to Dana while you were in the shower. He flinched. Then he tried to negotiate. He sat up straighter and his voice got this careful, controlled quality to it, like he was pitching something at a meeting. He said, what if we both just stop? End everything. No Dana, no Gio. We go to that couple's retreat. We start over. He said it like it was reasonable. Like we could just hit reset on the last 6 months and go back to being the couple that showed up to cookouts and smiled for pictures. I looked at him a long time. Long enough that I could see him start to fidget. His fingers tapped the table twice. His eyes moved between mine like he was searching for some little opening he could push through. Then I said, Reggie, you've done this before. To 2 other women. This isn't a mistake you made. This is who you are. And I don't want to be the 3rd woman you do this to and the first one dumb enough to stay. He didn't argue. That was how I knew he understood it was true. If it was a lie, he would have jumped on it. He would have said Gio is making things up or you don't know the full story. But he just sat there and took it because the truth doesn't leave you anywhere to run. He stood up and walked to the window. His back was to me and I could see his reflection in the glass. He looked tired in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. He said, I don't know who you are anymore. He said it to the window, to his own reflection. Not really to me. Like he was talking to the version of me that he had in his head for 6 years and realizing that version never existed. I said, you never did. That's the problem. He stood there a long time. I could hear the fridge humming. I could hear a neighbor's dog barking down the street. Normal sounds. Regular life sounds happening all around us while our marriage was falling apart at that table. Then he turned around. The anger was gone. The desperation was gone. The negotiating was gone. All that was left was something raw and simple. He said, do you love him? He meant Gio. He couldn't bring himself to say the name. Gio's name had become something Reggie couldn't hold in his mouth anymore. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, I don't know yet, but I know that he never lied to me. Not once. And I can't say that about you. He nodded slowly. It was a small nod. The kind that isn't really agreement, but more like acceptance. He sat back down across from me and put his hands flat on the table. He said, I need to know one thing and then I'll leave you alone. When I sat at this table and confessed and cried and begged you to forgive me, did you feel anything? Anything at all? The room was so quiet I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. I thought about lying. I thought about telling him something soft, but I had spent 6 years making things easier for Reggie, and all it ever did was make things harder for me. So I told him the truth. I said, I felt relieved because you finally gave me permission to stop pretending. His eyes filled, but nothing fell. He held it all right there on the edge. He said, so those 2 weeks when I was cooking for you and writing you that letter, you were just watching me perform? I said, I was watching you do in 2 weeks what you should have done in 6 years. And it was too late. You only tried because you were scared, not because you loved me. His chin dipped. He stared at the grain in the wood. He said, Gio knew all of this? He knew you were already done? I said, yes. He closed his eyes, and he just let me look like a fool. I said, you made yourself look like a fool. You brought flowers for the first time in 6 years because Dana made you feel guilty, not because you loved me. You didn't even know my favorite flower. You brought roses. I hate roses. Gio knows that. The room went still. That detail landed harder than anything else I had said, because it wasn't about cheating. It was about knowing someone. Reggie was my husband for 6 years, and he brought me roses because that's what you grab at the store when you don't know what else to get. But Gio knew, because he actually paid attention, because the little things mattered to him in a way they never mattered to Reggie. Sitting at that table, Reggie finally understood what he was up against. It wasn't just that his wife slept with his best friend. It was that his best friend knew his wife better than he did. His shoulders dropped. His hands slid off the table into his lap. He looked like a man who had been carrying something heavy for a long time, and just finally let it go. He was quiet for almost a full minute. Then he said, I'm going to go. I'll stay with my brother upstate. I'll have the lawyer send papers. He pushed the chair back and stood up. He walked to the front door and stopped with his hand on the knob. Without turning around, he said, for what it's worth, I did love you. I just didn't know how to do it right. His voice cracked on the last word, and I believed him. I think Reggie did love me in the only way he knew how. The problem was that the only way he knew how was never enough. Love that could cook breakfast but couldn't be faithful. Love that could write a letter but couldn't put the phone face down. I said, I know, that's the saddest part. He didn't slam the door. Reggie always slammed doors when he was angry. This time he just pulled it shut behind him. A quiet click, the latch catching the frame. I stood there. The clock on the wall kept ticking. The fridge hummed. A car drove by outside.